everybody. Before we jump into today's episode, we have two sponsors we want to say thank you to for supporting this show. The first one is Routine. You guys have heard me talk about Routine, honestly, back from the early days of the podcast, and it's still a product I use every single morning. They have a prompt for me here. I'm going to do a little impromptu on this ad read today because honestly, this is a product that I truly believe in. And so I'm just going to tell you guys exactly what I think and why. First and foremost, this is a stat that they shared, but when you sleep, you lose between a pound and a half of water. And most of that's just sweating while you sleep. I used to not know if that was actually true, to be honest. I felt like a pound to a pound and a half of water seemed like quite a bit while I slept. But the one thing I did constantly pay attention to when I started using Routine was just the fact that before using Routine, I always felt a little dehydrated in the morning. And I'm one of those people that when I get up really early usually. I work out. One of the first things I do is some form of fitness. It's just like what I do before everyone's awake. And so it's very easy for me to grab a coffee, pre-workout, an energy drink, something with caffeine in it, and just go. When I am good about using Routine, first, I basically they come in these little single serve packets. They contain half an organic lemon, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, Himalayan sea salt, all 6 essential electrolytes, and they have no sugar in them at all. A lot of hydration products are going to have sugar. So one of the things about Routine that I love is that there's no sugar in there. So when I am good about doing this consistently, I will take one of those single serve packets, I'll throw it in my mixer bottle, and whether I also put in a pre-workout or something with caffeine or I just drink that separately, I try to drink that first. And the days I do that, I do genuinely feel hydrated and just have a different form of clarity all morning. A lot of people have tried to make their own homemade versions of Routine, right? You see people they take a shot of the apple cider vinegar, they put a little sea salt, a little lemon in a drink. This is essentially that, but in a product that you can take with you on the go, have it ready for you first thing in the morning. I know me personally, when I'm groggy rolling out of bed, the last thing I want to do is, squeeze a lemon, cut lemons up, go get the apple cider vinegar, find my sea salt. I just rip this packet open, throw it in my water, drink it, and it's good to go. You can try yours today. If you haven't tried it yet and you've been listening to this podcast for years, just try the damn Routine. Give it a shot. You can use code ShaneWhite30 and get 30% off your first order. So you get 30% off by using code ShaneWhite30 and go to yourroutine.com. To make it even easier, I've added the link to yourroutine.com in the show notes. So just click on the show notes for this episode, click on the link to yourroutine.com, and don't forget to use code ShaneWhite30. All right, guys, today's episode is also brought to you by NeuroRoast. Again, I'm going to go a little off script here. NeuroRoast is a product that I also came across during this year of 2023. They are a coffee company that's helping you optimize your brain function and overall well-being. This is another product that, to be honest with you, when I first started working with it, I was a little on the fence. I was like, do I really want to have mushrooms in my coffee? Well, folks, I will tell you, when I use NeuroRoast, one of the things that has stood out to me the most is I'll back up. People that know me know that I have way too much caffeine, typically. One of the things this year I've done a good job of is cutting out alcohol. Not completely, but predominantly, I don't touch a lot of alcohol anymore. What I think I've actually done the other way, though, is add a lot more caffeine. So I do definitely drink too much caffeine. That's something I need to work on next year, is to try to minimize how much of that. But NeuroRoast is something that has actually helped me because of the way they've formulated their coffee. Like, unlike regular coffee, which is, still something I consume, but NeuroRoast specifically doesn't cause jitters or crashes. Mushroom coffee provides more balance and sustained energy, allowing you to stay focused and productive throughout the day. So the times I do use NeuroRoast, I'll be honest, I just don't feel that jittery, like, I'm jumping out of my chair or standing here at my desk jumping around feeling. So give NeuroRoast a try. They have some really good flavors. I'll be honest too, the two guys that started NeuroRoast are just really good dudes based out of New York, and they're hustling, and hopefully they can get some people to try NeuroRoast this holiday season by listening to this podcast. So for you folks who've been on the fence, I'm telling you, it tastes delicious. They've done a fantastic job of making this coffee not only be functional, but taste fantastic. And if you want to try NeuroRoast, you can use code ShaneWhite. So it's super simple, just ShaneWhite at checkout. you'll also get 30% off. So if you go to neuroroast.com, and once again, I have added that to the show notes. So just click into the show notes while you're listening to this episode. You can click on NeuroRoast link directly. Don't forget to use code just Shane White, and you'll get 30% off your order. Hope you guys love both these products. I'm trying to not only bring you guys products that I use, but that I believe in on the podcast. I'm not taking ad reads for any brands that I don't really believe in. So anyway, hope you guys love both those products, yourroutine.com and neuroroast.com. I've added those links to the show notes. I hope you guys love it. And I got an awesome guest coming up right after this. Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Shane White Show. I am pumped today to bring SHRAY Joshie to the podcast. This man, I finally wrangled you in. You're one of the people on my list. No, don't say sorry. You're one of the people on my list. It was like you, Peter Rahal. Who was the other one that recently I'm like, come on, just give me an hour. Give me an hour. I want to talk to you and get deep into your story. So thank you. I know you're busy as hell. So thank you for taking the time, man.
Excited to do this.
Welcome to the show. For everyone who's listening who doesn't know who you are, could you give everyone a little bit of a background to you, SHRAY, and what you're building?
Yeah. So background on me, I think like anybody who gets into CPG, they just have like a weird story in. And so background and context is I grew up super overweight. I was like, about 280 pounds, like big boy, like 46.
You were 280? Were you really 280 pounds?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
if anyone's not watching this, yeah, you're like, you're tiny.
Yeah, thank you. And so every classic person who wants to go to college, I thought I wanted to be a psychology major because I was like, I understand people and I want to understand people better. And I ended up having this like amazing professor semester 2 of university where he basically was like, hey man, you're fat, like you're fat as fuck. And you need to.
He actually said that to you?
Verbatim. And because he actually ran the nutrition lab at our university. And so I was like, well, yeah, I'm studying psychology. Like, I don't know what to do. He's like, screw that. You're going to go and quit psychology. You're going to become a biochemist and you're going to also go learn nutrition. So I like went under his wing over that couple year period.
Wait, you study biochemistry?
I have a degree in nutritional biochemistry.
Do you really? Oh, I should have known this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started off my career as an analytical biochemist.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was doing food research, diet, disease, nutrition research, working on this longitudinal study in Boston, basically of all these different ethnicities, incomes, genders, as well as like their types of diet, as well as the diseases that would show up as a result of that. And so through all that data, I just learned a bunch of like what I should be eating for myself, right? Like the learnings were pretty simple, like eat better foods, don't eat processed bullshit, eat more protein, eat more fruits, eat more vegetables. But like during college, like I ended up losing 150 pounds, just eating better, working out, all of that. And I felt unreal. And so rather than being like a good boy Indian doctor guy, like my parents really wished I was, I ended up just saying like, hey, I want to change what people consume. And like, that's the way to get people healthier. Like, and like, I've been marketed all this garbage food for my whole life. And that's what got me to the weight and the kind of like level of health that I was at. It's like, why don't I go help change how customers eat, drink, and like consume other, supplements, compounds, all that. And so that started off with me working at GNC actually, like as like a sales dude on the sales floor.
Wait, so you went from biochemist in a lab
as like a separate side hustle while I was working in college. I also ran like Facebook ads for my like local apartment complexes. That's how I learned performance. Was a sales guy for GNC, and I was on the floor like one-to-one selling. So just got like really good at like in 3 seconds being like, hey, who is this person? What do I think they need? How do I speak to what I think they need? And like, how do I speak to it to make sure that they feel like what I'm selling to them is important? So I got really good at like direct response, but like one-to-one. So like loved that. Was like all about the supplements world. Like I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And ended up being like the number 2 sales guy for a little bit and like the northeast of like the northeast for GNC. Like loved it.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, like just on like the sales floor perspective. And from there, then just like was overstimulated, drinking a bunch of coffee, working 3 different jobs. And like it was near the term of like my graduation, and I fell in love with matcha. Like I just started taking it. I went from 5 cups of coffee a day down to like 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day.
Oh, it sounds like I need that. I'm on.
Yeah,
I drink
100%.
like 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day.
Yeah,
It's not
definitely
good.
don't stop doing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
near the lethal dose. It's like 1.5 grams is like a lethal dose of caffeine.
Is it really?
Yeah, you're within striking distance of there. My
Okay,
friend.
that's good to know. Shit.
So I started like supplementing matcha. I loved the category, and I knew I wanted to get into CPG and live in New York. So I applied to a bunch of businesses. I almost worked at this company called Ugly Drinks. I almost worked at this other company, but it was another category. And then I ended up interviewing at Cha Cha Matcha, this brand in New York, and then ended up just getting the job, helped them on the digital front, and like kind of the rest is
But
history.
even that though, Shrey, your background and what you did, you were just kind of it's not like you were just a hustler. You're like, I just want to work, I want to build things, I want to sell stuff. How did you even get the marketing job at the first CPG company?
One of
you
my
have a
friends,
background in that, did you?
Yeah,
And not really.
So, no, I knew paid because I was running ads on Facebook.
What a baller!
And they were
That's
looking
awesome.
for an e-com guy. And so one of my buddies actually introed me to the founder, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, just like come by for an interview." I ended up taking a bus to New York, got to my buddy's place at like 12 o'clock. He, for 3 hours, told me everything he knew about marketing. I literally stayed up the whole night. I memorized every word of that video, internalized it into my, like the biochem side, internalized all of it, brought it into my like web, and then spoke to it. And the guys were like, "Hey, yeah, like we'll take a bet on you. Your buddy likes you, and like let's try it out." And so I became their marketing manager.
Whoa.
And so yeah, I was at Chacha for a little bit, then became the head of marketing and growth at a company called Nugs, this like plant-based chicken nugget company.
I remember that.
That was awesome. Like we did insane content creative, paid, really scaled that business up. Organic was crushing. We were getting like 6,000 likes a post. And like Mark Zuckerberg like liked one of the ads that we made. Like it was like a cool time there.
Yeah.
And then I became the head of digital and growth at Healthy Kombucha. And so that's when I then touched that's where we met our mutual friend, Calvin.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's where I remember the first time I ever heard your name. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Calvin and I then ended up leading up all things D2C, Amazon, e-retail, helped on the organic side, the influencer side, kind of like across the business. And that business just grew like significantly during our time there. Healthy ended up getting acquired, which was awesome, by First Beverage Group. And then I was chatting with one of the founders of Health Aid. She's like, "Honestly, dude, like I love you to death. You're a talented marketer. You're a terrible employee."
Wait, why were you a terrible employee, you think?
I just don't do well with corporate bullshit. You know, all the like pandering and like thought leadership of like why it should take us 6 months to figure out one social media post. I like die from. Like,
yeah, that sounds horrible.
Yeah, like 100% like a bull in a china shop. And the CFO and the chief sales officer at Health Aid were very much like enablers to me in that capacity. So I got to learn, fuck up like everything, but like test, you know, win. And so it got to the point where she was like, "Hey man, like I think you should start something." And I was like, "I don't know what to do." So I started texting all my friends and I was like, "Hey, I'm like, I can help you with marketing." And so it then turned where like I back in the day used to throw these like golf tournaments for a bunch of marketers in LA. And
I never knew this either.
We'd all just we would all just drink and hang out. And so I texted that group chat and I was like, "Hey guys, like I'm on the market. Like who needs help with consulting?" Got like 30 people that day being like, "How do we work together?" And the rest is history. It's like we've now slowly grown it out where, you know, team's growing, our clients are growing. We say yes to one client every month. Originally, you know, we were doing paid, we were doing websites, we were doing retention marketing.
Yeah.
Just say yes to everything that we could because like I could find people who are really smart executors and operators. But I would say over the last like 12, 18 months, we've now just fully focused on the retail media side. It's because like reason for it is the things. One, we don't want to be an agency that does everything. That sucks and you're spread too thin. Two, D2C for most brands, like excluding Amazon, like trueplay.com, huge burn on the cash side. The LTV is never there on consumable goods on .com businesses. And so you're just burning a bunch of cash to build up a business that like the strategics didn't value on an equity base, like an enterprise value basis.
Sure.
And then at the exact same time, all these retailers got really smart at being like, "Wait, we have a bunch of 1P data. Let's go build really good ad platforms for once." And so then you saw like Instacart starting to really crush it. DoorDash, who like we were like the second advertiser there.
Nice.
You know, Walmart.com, Target.com, 8451, like GoPuff just launched Cody. Like all these other platforms were starting to grow. And that we saw for our brands is like, hey, like 10 to 20% of retail revenue is coming from these digital platforms.
Right.
And like you have all these companies that are trying to do a little bit of everything. What if we were like the first agency that really like tripled down on just like retail media networks? So like, hey, we don't touch Amazon, we don't touch Facebook in like the performance marketing side anymore. All we do is we now act as your shopper marketer, and we
Mm-hmm.
act as your agencies that then go and help execute all these store specific activations, right? Because
Oh, cool. So you're
what
doing
we've
in-store stuff too now.
semi, but what you see is that like most of the time, trade and shopper has really been digested into trade marketing, which is mostly the in-store execution,
Right.
has become really a sales operations role. That tends to actually be the sales team that's executing that anyways. And then shopper marketing really just means digital now. It's like,
Yeah. Right.
and
Right. Right.
so
Right.
basically what we've now done is that like we basically one for a lot of our brands replaced or elevated the shopper function, because back in the day you had all these like T-Rex old school shopper marketers being like, I need to hire 10 agencies to manage, we need one for Walmart, one for Target, one for
I
Instacart.
remember that at our X Bar even
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And so we do a good job of consolidating, but then we also act as a strategic partner as like, hey, all of these retailers are now asking more and more what they're doing online to go and support the retailer. We now fully own all of that as well. So it's like
Got
we now
it.
act as a shopper marketer. So strategy, dollars, budgets on each retail account that they execute against. Second, we then do all things retail media management. Hey, dollars, cents, ads, display, etc. And then also like digital shelf management. Like how do we make sure that when someone looks us up on Instacart, we look completely different from the rest of the brands that are showcasing themselves on Instacart. And there's like really fun ways to go about like hacking that. So that's become the business now. Like that's kind of what we're up to. And so we work with, brands doing anywhere from 20 mil to, 300 million in revenue, helping them with basically just everything under the sun that has to do with retail media. So that's like
That's
background, like
awesome.
what
That's
we're up to
great.
today.
Yeah, no, I love that, Shrey. I mean, what's wild is I remember vividly, I went back and looked at this before here just to see if I was correct. We chatted, for us, it was month 2 of Noble. And I think maybe you were like a couple months ahead of
Yeah.
us. Like we started
Yeah.
pretty relatively similar
Yeah.
timing. And at that time, I think we both were in the exact same shoes. We were kind of both thinking like, you guys were doing tons of performance
Yeah.
marketing. You were doing
Yeah.
all this stuff. And we were doing the same thing. We were like trying to touch everything we possibly could
Yeah.
just to get a business off the ground. So bravo to you guys, though. I mean, what's that saying? If you're someone that tries to do everything does everything poorly, right? Like you figured out what you're good at and tripled down on it, which is really, really
Exactly.
powerful.
Yeah.
So it's funny for everyone listening to. Shrey's been a guy that I got introduced to very early when Kyle and I started Noble, and so it's been cool to see Shrey. I mean, just grow and explode. And for you, Shrey, the other thing I wanted to say quickly that's cool is we both try to work with, I would call like similar types of brands, like better for you, healthier food and beverage brands. So it's been cool just to see you guys succeed while we're doing our own thing over here. Knowing how long you guys have been building this, which it's crazy now, dude. Like it's actually been a lot longer than we probably both even realized.
It's like 2 years. Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So even longer for us then, I guess. What has been like the biggest surprise so far? So you try to figure all this stuff out. You give us this whole background. You jump into working for a couple CPGs, and then and it's called Good Peeps, by the way, is the agency name. What has been like the biggest surprise out of everything that I know it's been a crazy whirlwind already?
Yeah.
What has been something if you would have known 2-3 years ago that would have been like no, that's not part of what this is going to be?
It's like 2 or 3 things I think like constantly blow my mind. One is like how much upside and like impact we're able to have on these businesses. Like when I mean that, like we have a brand that is currently doing one of their club rotations, one of the 2 big clubs. You can guess which one it is. And we currently constitute like 25% of their velocity in that club account.
Okay.
On fucking Instacart. Like just the sheer like opportunity size is blowing my mind. Like for brands that are in Target, 30 to 35% of revenue for new brands in Target comes from Target.com. Like no one talks about that. Like that is an insane number.
It's brushed under the rug for sure.
Yeah. And like, so just the size has been unreal. 2 is like, since nobody's doing it, returns are also crazy for a lot of our brands. It's by far the most efficient channel for driving new customers into the business. Like if you're a product that's selling at $4 or $5, you're driving a $3 ROAS, you're spending $1 to $2 to acquire a paying customer into your business,
right?
Who then is most likely to buy at a higher LTV and repurchase rate than your typical in-store shopper, because the person who shops online, you get the buy it again bucks. So then it just starts driving the LTV. So it's like efficiency and growth, I would say, is 1. 2 is like, if you do good work, you end up just causing your own problem of like, everyone wants to work with you. And like, it's amazing. But I have learned something that surprised me is how bad I am at saying no. And I'd say like everybody on my team would say that this year, my biggest growth personally has been my ability to have focus and say no to a lot of the opportunities that come up. Like it's now I've shifted from it's not, and my friend Steve told me this, it's no longer the speed with which we make decisions that like determine our success. It is now like the quality of the decision that's made that we grade rank ourselves on. And
I love
so
that.
just getting more structured with saying yes to whom we really back versus just like having this like mindset of we need to say yes to everything has been a life changer for us. Like last 12 months, you know, I was saying this before we started this, like just under 200 brands have hit us up.
That's crazy, man.
We've said like in the last 12 months, like we've never once pitched a brand. Less than 5% of those brands that we've ever chatted with, we've said yes to actually work with as a client at Good Peeps. So I'd say like that's been like one, a blessing, but two, also a very like rigorous exercise at getting better at saying no. And then three is like, it's been surprising how pumped everybody is about this thing that like traditionally is a very unsexy part of the business. Like never in my life would I have thought that like we would be on calls with founders and I'm talking about how much money we spent on retail media networks and then being like, fuck yeah, like this is the best thing that we're doing as a business. Like you guys are unlocking so much growth for us as a company. Like I would have never once in a million years thought that like that would get the amount of energy attention that it is right now. Like
Sure,
a couple of years ago when we got Health Aid, we were talking about like retail media networks, right? It was like, oh, like what's that like stupid thing you're doing on the
I was gonna say, I
business?
remember in 2018, 2019, making sure we minimized that line item on the P&L. Like,
Exactly.
It was like, how can we do it but spend the least amount of money? Because it doesn't really.
Because they saw it as just a margin pull, but what we're now doing is that we're just showing, since it's driving so much incremental revenue for our businesses, everyone's just like flooding cash into it. Like my favorite line is like, this year, I think what we've done a great job of is stealing money from Facebook and Google spend and piping it into these retail media networks. Like, so yeah, that's like my.
I think it's smart, man. I know we both obviously like. I obviously spend so much time in Amazon. You and I see two different parts of the retail digital world where. Again, I don't look at a lot of Google, Facebook, Meta, D2C information, but the information I do get from brands that we work with on the D2C side, it just seems like, I don't want to say that side's dying, but it's just turning into a big marketing billboard, less so a profitable sales channel. And so I think what you and I are both working on, it seems like it's where everything is going. Like in the future, you got to imagine you're going to have digital retail presence. You're going to have an Amazon business. My big bet is that TikTok's is going to be funneling everything into Amazon at some point.
Yeah.
And D2C is just going to become this billboard where it's like a big marketing play. One of the last CMOs while I was at RX Bar, he told me the best example of that, which I think is interesting for food and beverage brands to think about, is Apple. Apple has the sexiest website. When you go to, it's like, oh shit, I want that. Everything looks beautiful and amazing. Oh, and by the way, they do sell products on there. But it's not the goal. The goal is definitely for them not to sell as many iPhones as they possibly can on their D2C site. It's for you to come and just be obsessed with the brand. And then shit, sure, if you want to buy, we're right here. I personally think that's where D2C is going. It's like you need it if you're a brand, but you're not going to lean on it for sales anymore.
Unless you're like a supplement. Like I think there's like 2 or 3 categories where it makes sense. Like high LTV and high cost per click bandwidth. Like, hey, you're making $500 on a customer year one. You fucking go for it.
That's a good point. Yeah, like if the ring is high enough and the efficiency on shipping, because it's like the shipping thing too. I think is where I feel like most trends
cranks everybody. But like if you're these guys, like Hintwater, this costs probably $15 to $20 to ship to somebody's house.
Yeah.
You're probably not buying more than $40 of water at a time unless you're bougie as hell.
Yeah,
This never makes sense for most companies.
Yeah.
And so we've just been taking all that money and just piping it into your guys' channel as well as like the retail media side.
Sure. Yeah. No, it makes a ton of sense. It's wild. It's wild how much it's even changed since we've met. It's just catapulted in that direction.
Yeah.
Since I obviously own an agency, this question is going to come up because I'm just generally curious and love that you're thinking of it kind of in a similar way. So I have to agree with you too on the fact where when you start off, you go from like we want to work with a specific type of client, but in reality you got to get a business going. So you just want to work with anybody and anybody, right? The first couple of months you're like, fuck anyone, please, we'll work with you.
Right.
How do you think you made that pivot? Because that pivot you hit on a few minutes ago about going from like yes all the time to being very specific on what you say yes to. I know I struggle with that too. And I think anyone who's running their own business, like when you see dollar signs in the short term versus long term, what you're talking about is maybe longer term for Good Peeps. How does Good Peeps turn into this multi-decade, well-known agency in the space because you made a lot of right moves? How do you think you made that pivot? Was it by making some mistakes and running into walls that you had to pivot, or is it just a slow turn for you?
It was not this like intentional, really well thought through thing. It was just like a forcing function. It was one, I would say that I equate a lot of my business's success so far to just having friends that call me out on my bullshit, right? Like
Okay. Yeah.
that, sure, I could go pay for a mentor, but like the most like underutilized asset is your friends group. And like luckily I have a lot of friends who have made the mistakes that I have yet to make. And like they're a couple of years ahead. And so I'm able to just go ask them a bunch of advice. And so if I'm going and talking to 20 other, agencies or funds or things like, groupings of individuals that I like really look up to, and all of them are saying the exact same thing, which is don't grow too fast and, don't let your ego be your biggest enemy. I don't have the ego anymore to say like you're so wrong. I'm gonna go grow this into the moon. Like I'm gonna just slow it down a little bit and like build it with intention. I would say the other part to why we got here is like you said, fucking up. Like I think at one point I would say early on in Good Peeps' career, we said yes to basically everything we could. And it just led to me working, and I've tracked this like 110 hours a week.
It's powerful when you stop and track it. I do that too.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy. If you're someone who tracks it, that's great that you did that.
It helps.
Seeing that number, tangible number, kind of like wearing the whoop or the aura or whatever, you actually see what you think something in your head, and then you track it. And you're like, oh wow, that number is different than what I thought I was doing.
I'm working 14 to 15 hours a day every day for the last 6 months. Like this is probably not long term, realistic. And so I would just say it was like a forcing function. I was like, hey, like I want to reverse engineer my life to like not need to work that much, and it's because I'm not doing a good job of building up the team and delegating enough. So let me just start to make myself a little bit less useful and like have the wherewithal to just like be able to train people up and like have them learn and like not have this like taking that like I could do everything faster than other people, so like let me just do it all. Like we now have people on the team that are moving at like my speed all the time, like surprising me. And so my friend gave me really great advice, which is just like, hey man, like you're gonna just burn out and like not want to do this at all if you keep going that way. And so I paused. We didn't say yes to anybody for another like 4 or 5 months, rebuilt the entire team system process structure. And like for the last like 6 months, it's just been like cranking the way that I really wanted to.
Good for you, man. Because that is something that I've heard actually multiple stories of agencies running into that exact same thing. I'd be honest if I didn't say we've run into some of that too. What was the process, I guess, though, SHRAY, for you to pivot from, because it's funny, I try to make a lot of correlations because I think what you're building and what we're building, there are some similarities in regards to what you said at the beginning. You sent this group chat out to your friends in this network. And I would assume that the initial yeses you got were like, I know SHRAY's a killer. I want to work with SHRAY. And right, Good Peeps at the beginning it's SHRAY, but he puts Good Peeps on the front of it. How have you slowly but surely pivoted from these brands being like, I'm hiring Good Peeps so I get SHRAY's talent and knowledge, to, hey guys, you're getting access to me and what I know, but I've built this kick-ass team. That's a big jump. And I just know that from experience. Like it's not the easiest thing to just have high, powerful people with you that are helping build in the right direction. What are some keys for people listening who are thinking about building teams? How have you gone about that?
I listened to My First Million all the time, and it's like one of my favorite podcasts.
I just started listening to those guys. I've listened to a couple in the past, and recently they had a few people on I knew, and I was like, I should listen to these guys. And they're great. I like them a lot.
It's a great pod. And so they have this line in the pod, which is like, the biggest life hack is hiring people that are smarter than you. That's it. That's all we've done. It's like, I've just slowly hired people that are smarter than me. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same knowledge base on the retailer side, but it means that they are either one, more knowledgeable than me on specific parts of the business, or two, they are just hustlers, and like they can take something that I do for 10% of my time, have that become 100% of their time, and make it 1,000 times better than what I'm doing. So it's really just been like the way that I transitioned from just being mostly an individual contributor with like this like logo on top of it to like having like an actual team is just like, I basically will sit down every Saturday and I'll say like, what are the repeatable tasks that I'm doing that are just eating up all of my time? For example, like Instacart feed management. And all right, I've now built 20 Instacart feeds. There is an 80-20 to like, yes, there's some, differences between every single Instacart feed that we do, but like, what's the 80% on that? I will literally write it all out into like an SOP in the way that it makes sense. And then I'll go teach it to somebody on my team. So like an example is like Natasha on my team, who is our marketing manager. I can now blindly trust that she could go build any feed for any retailer platform like this, because her and I've just sat down and we've like built it together 3-4 times after I've had the time to kind of synthesize and think through like the process behind it. And then now
Nice.
she's doing a better job than me at it, honestly. And she's like learning different ways to like optimize the feeds, play with titles, have impact there. So it's just like, I basically am just productizing everything that's repeatable and giving it to people that can kind of take it, own it, and scale it. And then also just hiring people that like I can blindly trust on the fact that they can own this part of the business. Like an example is like our finance team. Like our finance team I've been able to hand off in its entirety. We have an amazing like external finance team on that side, which lets me focus in on the business. And then when it comes to like the client facing side, and they're like, hey, you guys need to chat with good peeps, more than just chatting with SHRAY. It's just the results, right? Like I think a lot of agency founders do a great job of closing business because they have great connections at the space. But it's like you make a lot of noise with your name and like your relationships, but you make a lot of conversation with like the impact had. Like my favorite thing is like people talk about us without me knowing it most of the time. And I'll get a text being like, oh, I just met this person. They say great things about you, the team, and like what you're doing for their business. And so it moves from like, we want to work with SHRAY to, holy shit, the company is just doing great work for us. And then they happen to mention us to a bunch of people. And since like it goes back to like we've never really pitched, most of our clients are now just our biggest referral sources. And when they talk about our business, they're not talking about me, they're talking about the whole company in its entirety. So that's how I think we've shifted from like it being a SHRAY thing into it being just good peeps. It's like who's making most of the noise at this point? It's our clients. They're talking about our total team and business versus just me at this point.
I love that. What a cool way to describe that, SHRAY. That's great. I know I recently read a book. Have you heard of a book called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell?
No, I'm gonna have to get it.
I'm gonna send this to you. It's honestly changed the way I think about business, and honestly, you're doing a lot of the things in here. But my part two of that question that I wanted to ask you is a lot of the organizations that I've studied, a lot of smaller founder agency type businesses. What you did is very smart. It's an awesome way to do it. Now that you've got people who are doing some of the things for you that isn't moving the needle for good peeps, and honestly, now they're doing a better job than you, like you said, that's fucking awesome if you can figure that out. Are there certain parts of the business where you're like, okay, now I can triple down on, these areas where SHRAY is the best and this is what fills your cup and you love? And
that's exactly where we're at. Yeah. So the things that like kill me is finances, operations, and legal. I die.
I can't see you sending invoices out.
I die. And I'm often late with sending invoices out to a lot of our clients. It is something that I have never just like focused on.
Okay. Got it.
And we now have really great teams that have productized that beyond me. And then the thing that I get the most energy from is still the shopper strategy from. Like at the end of the day, like this thing that is called like retail marketing, digital retail, let's call it digital shopper, is still so new, still so early that I'm really starting to just focus a lot of my time on like, one, what are the strategies that we know that are tried and true for all of our businesses that we need to get so goddamn efficient on from a process perspective? How do we productize that more? And then two, how do I enable the team to do more swings on like these new platforms, these new products that can have like massive upside potential for our brands? Like an example of that is like this product called Social Nature. Social Nature does couponing for a lot of our businesses. Ibotta, you can think about it, Ibotta does like 8 to 10%, redemption rates. Social Nature is at like 40% redemption rates on their digital coupons. But that only happened because I was able to literally just take a call with them on the side, test it out for a couple of our clients, validate it. And then now what we're doing is building an internal process at Good Peeps to be like, hey, how can we now make sure that this little tool in the toolkit is useful for all of our clients? So it's like what my role has now become is like go and try the things out that I think will have like high output, but like we're not super sure on it. We haven't validated and tested it.
Right.
Do it a couple of times once we've seen that it wins with a couple of people internally, and then be able to hand that process off to somebody internally after that. So I could go and try the new things out. Because what happens with a lot of agency owners is like there are these talented operators who like learned by like testing and like throwing shit at the wall. But the moment they become an agency owner, they just like have to focus on like this very productized like system and structure to like be able to scale. But the hack is like have people on your team that can basically take that and like grow that infrastructure out. But then that person who is like the person who just figures shit out, throws things at the wall, continues to get to do that, see what works, and then bring that into the broader organization. So that's still like a huge part of my job is like being the person that tests and tries these like new platforms, new products, new like strategies out, validate them, and then bring it to the rest of the business. That's like
No, I love that.
really
And you
more
can tell, I
my
can tell just from you
position.
talking about it, you're fired up about it, which is, I feel like such a crucial part for a founder is like, you don't get to lose the part that got you into this in the beginning. I've used this multiple times. I remember vividly when I joined our Bar in 2017, a month after the paperwork's getting signed, and Peter's still first one in the office. We had like a kitchen in the office, like it was like a glass walled kitchen thing. He was still getting up all the time. He'd get a phone call. He'd take his phone calls on speaker and walk around the office.
Yeah.
And so you hear him talking to people from Kellogg and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
but then he'd always he's going in the lab and he's like messing around with the R&D folks. And like you could tell he's so obsessed with product that it didn't matter if he sold the company and made a ton of money. He was still obsessed with making our bar the best bar it could be, which is cool. I think that was something that was my first experience in CPG, was seeing a founder like that. And I'm like, oh, I hope if I ever get to start my own thing, I get to, fall in love with a piece that you don't lose once you become a bigger company. That's really cool, Shray. So, your story of getting into health and wellness, I didn't know that. That's really wild. I had no idea that was your beginning. Now that with Good Peeps, I know, even just from being friends, like you've worked with brands that are definitely better for you, healthier brands. Is that still where Good Peeps wants to be? Is it widened a little bit as you guys have grown as an agency? Do you want to try to get into, I don't know, different categories, different products that maybe aren't where you necessarily started, but now that you see an opportunity, there's tons of brands to help in this space. So I'm curious where you think Good Peeps is going.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we traditionally started off very heavily like food bev. Like that was just like our space. And so like that better for you positioning, it works all day.
Mm-hmm,
but then we also have like household products, and like there's a limit to how much you could.
Yeah. Well, this is a question I wanted to ask you because
there's like a limit to how like better for you a pan can be.
Sure.
We've expanded it, but I would say like we are still overly invested in the better for you space, flat out. Like that's what it is, because I think consumers just continue to want more and more better for you.
Mm-hmm.
But like at the same time, like I just became an investor to a company called Compi. They sell freeze dried candy. They sell freeze dried candy. And
cool.
like, who would have ever thought that like freeze dried candy would just be blowing up the way that it is? But that business is absolutely killing it. It is the furthest thing away from better for you from like a traditional like health and wellness perspective, but it's just so goddamn fun to work on, and like the founders are just so pumped up that I think it's changed our stance a little bit. But honestly, like I think what we're doing is that we're just matching customer intent, and like most consumers are looking for better for you products 99% of the time. But like it's completely unrealistic of me to not expect that like you on a Saturday like want ice cream or want candy. And
right.
And like we want to work with the brands that are like doing it the best in that place, is kind of how I would describe it. Like Isaac at Compi is probably one of the most fun founders that we work with. Like dude literally gets, I think last time we chatted, like 300 million views organically on YouTube a month. Yeah, for his businesses.
Oh, I should get him on here. I don't even know what this company is.
He's the best guy. But like that's not better for you. Like that doesn't, work into our, business.
But it's still exciting. It's fun to work on.
Exactly.
It's a different challenge, right?
Exactly. But like what we now say is like Good Peeps is a business that helps brands grow online and in store. And like our slogan is like good people, good work, good times.
Love
and
that.
Like our number one rule that I say is like we have a NAP, a no assholes policy. And if you fit those three like filters, there's a possibility that we work with you guys. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, that's a good one. You surprised how much the NAP one. That's an important one. That's an important one.
We're working on a new website right now, and it'll literally be like our second content block.
I love that, dude. That's great. Yeah. That's great. The reason I brought that question up, it's funny and timely. I was having a conversation a couple days ago with, he's actually a venture capitalist too. He just had some questions on a brand I work with, and we were chatting, and he's got kind of a finance background like I do. And so we got into like the deep end of some like analytical numbers that I love to geek out on. And it was funny because he just flat out asked me, he goes, why do you work in food and bev? He's like, you can use these metrics in tech, you can use them in really high margin industries. And it was funny. I've just, me and my co-founder Kyle, we're just obsessed with the better for you space. Yeah. But the reason I ask is honestly, we have also dabbled with brands in other spaces. It's something I haven't given a lot of life to, mainly because the brands we have worked with in that space, cool, awesome, but like it just doesn't, I don't know what it is. There's like a cool factor sometimes that there's nothing wrong with a pan, like you said. It's cool, but I don't know what it is. It's funny. So I was curious what your thoughts were on that, because I've tried to open my eyes to that. There's so many, like even on Amazon, there are so many categories that we don't play in at all, that honestly, it's like they don't expire.
Yeah.
There's like a whole shelf life thing you don't have to
Right.
deal with.
And there's not
Margins are
like
way better, so they
95
can.
brands an hour launching against it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
It was
you
like
can test a lot more. I don't know. It's interesting. It's like one of those things that I honestly just, even as an agency owner, didn't think a whole lot about until he asked me this, even this week, and it made me kind of stop and be like, yeah, it's good. I just love what I'm
why?
working on. I guess that's the
Yeah.
biggest reason. But it's funny because I think you'd know this too. It's like, man, food and beverage is tough. Small margins, velocities, everything. It's like we didn't pick the
Product is
easiest
everything.
category to work in by any
Yeah.
stretch. I don't know. I don't know if you've thought much about that.
Yeah. I think the best line of advice that shifted my frame here is the old chief business officer from Barstool Sports gave me this advice, which is like, you're a good marketer when you can go crush it in, for any brand in a category that you work on, or rather, like, you have the highest chances of crushing it for any brand in a specific category. You're a fucking great marketer when you can then do that for multiple categories. And so that has kind
Oh,
of
I
just
like
been
that.
this, yeah, like that has been this thing that has just stuck to my brain like super glue. And so I think that's what's given me the ability to not hate myself by moving beyond just better for you food bev.
Sure. Yeah.
And like honestly, I think that like the best artists create art that takes inspiration from multiple places and spaces. And so by us being able to work on these other businesses that are, let's call it $200 down to 35 cents a unit, helps all of our core brands out even more because we can go and try stuff out that like, I would have never thought would work for another brand, validate it, bring it into their business. So yeah, I think that line is what's like really given me the ability to like move beyond what we
I love that.
with
That's so true. It's one of those things where there's synergies across categories that I
yeah.
know I've learned that I would have never thought I would have learned until it just happens, and you're like, oh, it works for. Let's use the same analogy. It works for the pan company. That's something we should try in food and beverage. That's like a strategy that could totally work.
Yeah.
So, and you guys are fully remote, right? You guys don't have an office.
Yeah,
Do you
you
have an
don't
office?
want me in an office. Like if I was in an office, I would run through walls like the Kool-Aid man. Like I cannot do that.
This is a big debate right now. Do you know this, by the way? I say
Everyone
that.
who does this whole thing where they go, it's not a debate. What it is that it's a bunch of founders being assholes to their employees, being like, I should just have everybody in office because like, I just think that everybody should work harder. And then you have
That's
everybody
exactly
who's
what
not
I
a
said.
founder. Yeah. You have every not founder who's like, dude, fuck that. I don't need to be in an office to be efficient. Here's my take on this. If you are complaining about how you wish that everybody was in office and you don't think that people are working as hard as they should, it's actually two things. One, you don't trust your team in terms of their ability to execute because you've probably hired people that you don't inherently trust. That's mistake number one on their side. Sure. And then two, you don't have the right incentive structure for your team for them to wake up and be pumped the fuck up every day to go and work their ass off, grow as individuals, learn things, try things out, and like kind of take ownership of their part of the business. Across everybody that works for me and with me at this point, I have zero worries about what they're doing from at their home on a day to day because all I know is that I'm measuring them to their outputs and their results, and such that that's doing what it needs to do. I don't give a shit where you're doing it from. You could be in fucking Tulum at a pool updating display ads, such that you're getting it done in the time that it needs to be done at. Like that's my
that makes sense, and that's logical to me. It was funny because I've been seeing all these rumblings online and a couple podcasts I listened to, and that's exactly what I came to the conclusion of. Is everyone that was saying that we should all like you're losing your company's not growing as fast as it could or as successful as it could because you're not in the office together. I said these are also coming from people who own these enormous corporations, and you just don't you have lost control. You don't trust the people who are working. That's exactly my thought. I was curious your thought.
Olipop, arguably the most successful brand in our space of better for you food and beverage, they're remote.
Totally remote, right? Yeah.
And all 40 of the people that are on Twitter complaining about this and their revenues combined are still not as big as Olipop. So it's like, is it
true
the team or is it the founder at that point is my take there.
I'm with you 100%. It was funny. One of the ones I recently heard, do you know what the All In podcast is?
Yeah. I just met Chamath
went on a whole thing about
summit.
it. I was like, really? I don't think that's as efficient as you think it is. I think you're turned into a boomer over here. I'm dropping that. I think this is a boomer comment. Like we all need to sit because like he's in his fancy little office over here. He's not even. Yeah, whatever. I thought it was fun.
Right.
Wild. So the one thing I know we're winding down on time, SHRAY. When we get towards the end, I always love to ask a few of the same questions to every founder on here. The first one is source of knowledge. So if you have a book, a podcast, an article, just anything that pops in your brain that listeners today who are listening might take value from, if anything comes to mind right away?
If it's when it comes to marketing, the number one book that I recommend to everybody is called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing.
Ooh,
It
okay.
is by far the most impactful book I have ever read for how I think about marketing for CPG.
Really?
Yeah,
I've never even heard
it
of this
is the
book.
shortest book that you'll read as well. It's like
Okay.
100 pages, but every single law of marketing in there, you will reread 20 times. It is the best book I've ever read on marketing.
Okay.
2 favorite podcasts, All In, obviously. That podcast is goated.
It's great.
My First Million, amazing. I'd say those two are the ones I listen to like religiously. And then when it comes to like social media or like thought leaders that like I really look up to, honestly, like I think I tend to not really listen to a lot of the LinkedIn lords and the Twitter lords. But what I
love
do
I've never
love,
heard someone say that. That's so funny. It's so true.
yeah. Because most of the time you have these people who are thought leaders but have never executed shit in their life. And so what they end up doing is that they just sit in their, office and they're like, what's something that sounds great but in practice has probably never been tested or executed and is a terrible idea.
And I'm like, where do you have so much time to create these novels of LinkedIn posts? I don't have the time usually to make this many posts a day.
I mean, there are ones like the CMO of Chubbies. He makes some of the best LinkedIn content ever.
I mean, actually, he's supposed to be coming on here. He's great, okay. Preston.
He's a G. Yeah, Preston, he's a G.
He's so funny. When you were saying all that, I'm like, there's one person I'm thinking of that doesn't count towards this because he actually delivers some sick content.
Or like the president of Malk. He's a badass on that side. But it's like where I go to actually gain useful insights. Honestly, is like all of our data partners, like Numerator, Spins, IRI, like that's actually where I get most of my learnings. Because like most of CPG, so much of CPG is category, retailer dynamics, size of price. And everyone can like theoretically tell you what that all has been. But like when we go do a lot of auditing for our businesses, we actually just use those 3 platforms to go and like educate me on the category. Like,
okay.
It's really easy for us to go in and, look at a brand that's like making a bunch of noise, etc. But like those platforms like validate the category for us. Sure. So I actually spend a lot of my time like a loser on Fridays, just like looking through Numerator and being like, all right, like who buys bars, for example, in the Northeast that shop at Costco and Target? Like, because the more that you know your customer, the more that you're able to speak to them.
That's amazing.
The more that you can like internalize, almost memorize, these are the people that buy these products for these retailers. It just like lets me become more helpful. And then like the last bit is, I don't know, other books. Start With Why continues to be the book that I love for everybody. Yeah. You probably have
that. I'm doing I haven't really talked about this much. I'm almost done with 75 Hard, which is like this dumb. I wouldn't say dumb. It's just like it's a fun little thing to change up. Yeah. And I've been in this horrible habit. Every time someone recommends a book, I just buy it immediately. And so behind me, this is like all books I have like just fucking not read, but I'm working on.
If you don't like
it's
that
on my
book,
desk.
I will Venmo you the price of the book if you do not get an immense value.
I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to send this to you. So I need your address because I'm going to send this book to you. It's phenomenal.
The last book that I actually buy and highly recommend to everybody on my team is a book called it's called Great Artists Steal. And so the whole premise behind it is like good artists copy, great artists steal. And it's been massively helpful for me in terms of just reframing about how I think about creativity generally, which is like, hey, the majority of people just copy for the sake of copying. But what they end up doing is that they never understand why the person had the output that you were copying in the first place. So the more that you can understand that initial, let's call it like moment of inspiration, you can actually take that and then translate that into a lot of actionable things for your business. So for example, is like, all right, good artist copy, great artist steal. Good artist move for me to be would be like to build a performance marketing agency because all of our friends are doing it, or an Amazon agency because everybody's doing it right now.
Yeah.
And just like blindly follow that business. But like a great artist steal move is basically say, hey, why is everybody starting a performance marketing agency for Facebook? It's because of X, Y, Z reasons. It's because categories growing like crazy. A bunch of businesses are being built just off of this. A lot of like private equity, venture capital is going into these businesses that are booming on D2C. And so like that's why a lot of these like original paid agencies were like growing, was like, hey, crazy outsized return, crazy impact. And basically every single one of our friends that has ever started a paid agency has just because they've copied and they've seen another agency who did that. It was like, I took those insights. I was like, hey, this actually does better for retail media in today's era. And like, we've now just been growing the way that we've been growing. And like, it's been the most fun I've ever had working on our project. So like, that book forces you in a different, and in the same way, which is like focusing on first principles again.
Yeah, I was gonna say first
But
principles.
like first principles often is a very challenging term for me because it's so fucking broad and
I would
inactionable.
agree. Yeah.
That like focusing on points of inspiration and then taking that and figuring out what that is and bring that into your life, that's been like the greatest life hack for me. So that book I cannot recommend enough.
Wow. Okay. Great. You just dropped a couple of big ones. I love that. Thank you,
Yeah,
Shrey.
of course.
The last question, and this is the most fun, is
Yeah.
and I'm so excited to hear what your answer is to this.
All right, let's see.
What tools do you put around you to, map out long-term goals, yearly goals for SHRAY and Good Peeps, as well as what do you use just to get shit done today and prioritize what's important? Are you a pen and paper guy, a planner guy, apps? What does SHRAY surround himself with to get stuff done?
I am a massive pen and paper guy. In the most like traditional capacity. Everything that I do is on pen and paper.
Okay.
For my action items, like things that I need to get done today, is a pen and paper thing. If I write it down, I get it done, is my rule that I have with myself.
Okay.
But for the team, our clients, etc., we are just kind of three tools. We are a Slack, Notion, Gmail business. Like we have just productized the shit out of those three platforms. We're like currently in the process of like hiring like a data engineer to like, build more like
Cool.
data and reporting for the business. But you would be surprised how complex our Notion docs are at this point.
Well, Notion's one that we've like dipped our toe into, and then I jump back out, and then I jump in, I jump back out. Everyone keeps saying Notion. I'm like, I know I'm way, way, way behind that wave. Is that
it is my
really
number 2 most used app on my phone right now outside of YouTube. Like I use it that much. Yeah.
And did you just dive in? Because I think what's always thrown me off is there's like 5 billion templates and shit to learn, and I'm like, I don't even know if I have time to learn another app, SHRAY.
So Notion on YouTube has a Notion 101 45-minute series.
Okay.
I sound like such an old fart saying this. That single hour of my life that I spent is basically how my whole company is templated now at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Notion built the best 101 I think I've ever seen in human existence. Like,
does this require just like straight focus, not like
just
don't
listen.
Kind of? Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Listen,
you can like have it on another screen and
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. It's literally just like keyboard shortcuts and like best ways to use the tool. And I would say 3 or 4 months into the business, it was basically where everything started to exist. It acts as our Word and Excel. It acts as our data. It acts as our reports and spreadsheets. It acts as our media hub. It acts as some communications with some of our clients. Like it's really? Our go-to. And then Slack we use religiously as well.
Yeah. Because we're like all Google Drive still, and I like Excel documents, Word. I mean, I feel like which has turned into being like an old school type thing now. Yeah, it's like everyone's saying Notion, and it's funny. We work with a client who loves Notion, and so I've been like dabbling into Notion. I'm like, oh, this is actually really fucking nice. This is cool, but I just got to figure it out. I'll watch the video. I'll do the 101 as a follow up. SHRAY, you're convincing me. All right, man. Well, thank you for the time. For everyone listening who loved today's conversation, wants to learn more about Good Peeps, wants to either follow along with you, what's a good place for people to find you and the company?
I would say LinkedIn is like the easiest place to find like me and kind of what we're up to. Like I share a lot of like our wins and like learnings there. And I would say just our website, thepeeps.co, THEPEEPS.co. A lot of the logos are older. We haven't updated that website in a while, but that has our form that like people use to go and like do a submission to be able to get in contact with us. I would say that's like the easiest way for me to be able to understand like, a lot of cold outreach happens on LinkedIn because there's like 3 million vendors trying to pitch me. But what I've seen happen for a lot of our form submissions, if they're like, hey, I'm the founder of this brand, here's what we're up to, would love a chat, that form submission goes directly to my email. So I get to see all of those.
Okay.
So I would say that's the easiest way to get in contact with me.
Okay. Well, SHRAY, thank you so much, man. I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you coming on the show. This is so fun. I love catching up with you and chatting through all the stuff you're doing, and genuinely am so pumped for you guys and how much success you're finding.
Thank you. You guys are crushing as well. Everyone brings up your guys' name and kind of conversation. I'm like, I fucking know those guys. Those guys are crushing it.
I appreciate it. I honestly, same back to you. I hear Good Peeps. I feel like at least every other day it seems like at this point, and I'm always like, awesome. SHRAY's crushing over there. I love it. SHRAY and his team's great. Next time you're in Chicago, we really should do a meetup and do a dinner or something. We'll do something big, or when we're in LA. Cool, man. All right, man. I appreciate it. And we'll let's
We'll
stay in
talk
touch.
soon.
All right.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. See you soon.